first thing you noticed was the smell. It wasn't just the common unwashed laundry and spoiled milk odor of a house in decline. It was a thick, biological stench, a cloying miasma of decay and waste that seemed to have soaked into the very walls of the small, beige-sided duplex at 23 St. Paul Street. For weeks, the neighbors had whispered. They saw the curtains, perpetually drawn. They saw the trash piling up on the porch, a monument to domestic entropy. They saw Erica Murray, a slight young woman with a perpetually harried expression, coming and going at odd hours, sometimes with a new baby, it seemed, though no one had ever seen more than one child outside at a time. This is the story of Erica Murray Horror House. Welcome to our YouTube channel, Unreal Truthful Crime. Erica Murray was born in 1983 in the United States. On this day, October 14, 2014, a neighbor's concern overrode the unspoken rule of suburban non-interference. She'd seen Erica leave, looking disheveled and frantic, and had decided to check. She knocked, first politely, then with increasing urgency. When no one answered, she tried the knob. It was unlocked. The air that hit her was a physical blow, warm and suffocating, carrying within it the ghosts of feces, urine, rot, and something else. Something ancient and foul that she could not immediately identify. Gagging, she pushed the door open wider, letting the late afternoon light slice into the gloom. The scene was one of apocalyptic squalor. The floor was sticky underfoot, littered with trash, soiled diapers, discarded food containers, and clothes. Flies buzzed in lazy clouds. But it was the sound that truly froze her blood. Not a cry, not a whimper, but the soft mewling sound of an infant, weak and thin, coming from the second floor. She didn't venture further. She backed out, stumbling into the clean air, fumbling for her phone, her hands trembling so violently she could barely dial 911. When the first Blackstone police officers arrived minutes later, they were seasoned professionals, but nothing could have prepared them for the visceral horror of 23 St. Paul Street. They moved through the first floor with tactical caution, their boots crunching on debris, their flashlights cutting beams through the filth. The stench was so potent it felt like a taste at the back of the throat. They called out, identifying themselves, and were met only with that same faint, heartbreaking cry from above. Officer Michael Stevens was the first up the stairs. The banister was sticky, the steps strewn with more trash. The upper hallway was dark, the air even thicker. He pushed open the first door. The room was a nursery, or had been intended as one. A crib stood against one wall. In it, he saw a baby, impossibly small and thin, its skin a pale, almost translucent gray. It was swaddled in a blanket that was stained dark with filth. It moved feebly, its eyes large in its sunken face. It was alive, but just barely. His partner, Officer Lisa Grayson, checked the next room. It was another bedroom, and there, in another crib, was another infant. This one did not move. It was curled on its side, its skin a mottled bluish color. The smell of decomposition here was localized, specific, and overwhelming. This child had been dead for some time, days, maybe weeks. Flies crawled on its tiny, still form. A wave of cold, professional dread washed over them. This was no longer a simple welfare check. This was a crime scene of the most depraved order. They secured the area and called for detectives, for the medical examiner, for child protective services, for every resource the county had. As the investigation unfolded over the next several hours, the full, unimaginable scope of the tragedy was revealed. In a small, closet-like room on the third floor, they found a third infant, also deceased, in a state of advanced decomposition that suggested it had been there for months, maybe longer. The home, upon a more thorough search, yielded 4 more tiny bodies. One was found in a bedroom drawer, wrapped in a towel. Another was hidden in a small locked box in the basement. All were newborns. All were Erica Murray's children. The living baby, a girl, was rushed to the hospital, where she was found to be severely malnourished and suffering from multiple infections. She weighed less than she had at birth. The other surviving children, 2 toddlers, a boy and a girl, aged 3 and 5 months old, who had been found wandering in the filth on the first floor, were also taken into emergency care. They were dirty and hungry, but miraculously, they were alive. The nation was stunned. How could a woman, a mother, live in a house with her living children while the corpses of her other babies lay rotting in the rooms around them? The story that emerged from the ensuing investigation was a complex and tragic tapestry of mental illness, profound neglect, and a system that had, in countless small ways, failed. Erica Murray was 23 years old when she was arrested. She lived in the duplex with her boyfriend, Raymond Rivera, who was the father of the 2 youngest surviving children. To the outside world, they were a quiet, if reclusive, couple. But inside that house, a private hell was unfolding. Erica had come from a seemingly normal, middle-class background. She was the youngest of 6 children, described by former classmates as quiet and a bit of a follower. She had dreams of becoming a cosmetologist. But in her late teens, something shifted. She began dating Raymond Rivera, a man several years her senior, and became pregnant shortly after graduating high school. That first pregnancy ended with the baby being given up for adoption, a decision that, according to later psychological evaluations, haunted her. Her life with Raymond was unstable. He worked sporadically and they moved frequently, their existence financed by a patchwork of public assistance and help from family. Erica, isolated and dependent, began to exhibit signs of severe mental health issues. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, but she was inconsistent with her medication, often stopping because it made her feel numb, or because she couldn't afford the prescriptions. The descent into the horrific reality of 23 St. Paul Street began with a secret pregnancy. Erica became pregnant again, and she hid it from everyone, including Raymond. She gave birth alone, in the bathroom of their previous apartment. The baby, a boy, was born healthy. But Erica, in a psychotic state fueled by postpartum depression and her untreated mental illnesses, was convinced the infant was a demon, a monster. She told investigators later that she heard voices telling her the child was evil. A few days after the birth, she suffocated him. Terrified and confused, she wrapped the tiny body in a blanket and hid it in a small suitcase. She told Raymond she had miscarried. This first act, born of psychosis and desperation, set a terrible precedent. The secret of the dead baby became a wall between her and the world. The shame and fear cemented her isolation. When she became pregnant again, the pattern repeated. She hid the pregnancy, gave birth in secret, and then, overwhelmed by the same delusional thoughts and the crushing fear of discovery, she killed the newborn. Each time she would hide the body somewhere in the house, a closet, a drawer, a box. It was as if, by making the baby disappear, she could erase the reality of the pregnancy and the act itself. The house became a mausoleum for her secrets. she lived her daily life stepping around the physical manifestations of her psychological breakdown. She would cook meals in the kitchen while the corpse of a child decayed in a bedroom upstairs. She would watch television while another was sealed in a box in the basement. The filth that accumulated was an external reflection of the internal chaos. The overwhelming guilt, the paralyzing fear, the fractured sense of reality. Raymond Rivera, by his own account, was largely absent. He claimed he worked long hours and was often away for days at a time. He said he knew Erica had been pregnant, but he believed she had miscarried or given the babies up for adoption. He said he never noticed the smell, attributing it to the general squalor and the diapers of the 2 living toddlers. He claimed he never went into the 3rd-floor room or the specific closet where the bodies were hidden. It was a story of willful, almost criminal ignorance. Whether he truly didn't know or simply chose not to know became a point of fierce contention. The 2 children who survived in that environment, the 3-year-old girl and the 5-month-old boy, existed in a state of profound neglect. They were fed, but irregularly. They were changed, but not often enough. They learned to crawl and walk through a landscape of garbage and their own waste. Their world was the dark, stinking confines of the house, their mother a distant, erratic figure. The breaking point came with the final 2 pregnancies. The baby, found dead in the crib, the one Officer Grayson discovered, was a girl. Erica had given birth to her in the house just a few weeks before the discovery. For a short time, she had tried to care for her, alongside the other 2 living children. But her mental state was in freefall. The voices were constant. The baby stopped thriving. She stopped crying, then she stopped moving. One morning, Erica found her cold and still in the crib. Instead of calling for help, she simply left her there. She closed the door to the room and tried to pretend it wasn't happening. The final baby, the one found alive and starving in the other crib, was her last. She was born just a week before the police arrived. Erica, in a moment of fractured clarity, had tried to care for this one. She had named her, but she had no formula, no will, no capacity. She fed the newborn sugar water when she cried. She changed her diaper once, maybe twice. As the days passed and the baby grew weaker, Erica retreated further. She would leave the house for hours, driving aimlessly, leaving the newborn and the 2 toddlers alone in the squalor. The living baby's weak cries were the final, desperate signal that pierced the walls of the house and summoned the neighbor, setting in motion the chain of events that would end the nightmare. In the aftermath, Erica Murray was charged with 2 counts of murder for the 2 most recently deceased infants, and a raft of other charges including assault and battery on a child, child endangerment, and fetal death concealment. She was deemed competent to stand trial only after years of intensive psychiatric treatment in a state facility. The psychological evaluations painted a portrait of a woman utterly detached from reality. She spoke of the dead babies not with malice, but with a bizarre, detached practicality. She referred to them as it. She told one psychiatrist that she knew they were dead, but she didn't know what to do, so she just put them away. She said the voices in her head told her they were not human, that they were dolls or demons. The horror of her actions seemed to exist in a parallel universe to her own perception of events. Raymond Rivera was also charged with parental neglect for the living children, but he ultimately accepted a plea deal and testified against her. The court proceedings were a slow, painful dissection of the tragedy. Crime scene photos were presented, showing the house in all its grotesque detail: the piles of trash, the soiled diapers, the cribs with their tiny skeletal occupants. The medical examiner testified to the causes of death. The newborns had been suffocated or died from neglect, and the advanced states of decomposition. The defense argued that Erica was legally insane, a victim of her own broken mind, lost in a psychotic fog so dense she could not discern right from wrong. The prosecution argued that she knew enough to hide the pregnancies, to hide the bodies, to lie to her boyfriend, and to present a semi-functional facade to the outside world. They argued that this demonstrated a consciousness of guilt, an understanding that her actions were criminal. The case never went to a full jury trial. In 2019, Erica Murray changed her plea to guilty on 7 counts of second-degree murder. In a statement to the court, she said, "I should have gotten help. I was sick. I didn't know what I was doing was wrong until afterwards." It was a statement that satisfied no one, offering no real explanation for the unimaginable. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 35 years, a sentence that ensured she would be an old woman before she ever saw freedom again. The story of what happened inside 23 St. Paul Street is more than a catalog of grotesque facts. It is a chilling reminder of the absolute vulnerability of children and the terrifying power of a mind at war with itself. It asks unbearable questions about the nature of evil versus the nature of illness. Was Erica Murray a monster, or was she a casualty of a mental health care system that allows the most vulnerable to fall through the cracks until it is too late? The truth, as it often is, lies in the terrible, silent space between the two. The house on St. Paul Street was not just a scene of a crime. It was a physical manifestation of a profound human breakdown, a secret garden of death and despair that grew in the dark, hidden from view, until the stench of its reality became too powerful to ignore. The 3 children who survived have been adopted and are being raised in new homes. Their early lives a shadow they will never fully remember, but whose scars they may carry forever. The small beige duplex still stands, a quiet, unassuming house on a quiet street, holding within its walls the echo of a silence that was broken too late. Thank you for watching this complete video. Please like and subscribe our YouTube channel, Truthful Crime. Stay safe.